Today, I'm honored to have Kevin on the show. Why? Because Kevin represents something that all of us need a little more of in our lives: the courage to define ourselves rather than allowing others to define us. Many people hear the word disability and immediately focus on limitations. Kevin challenges that way of thinking. In his own words, disability is the ability to help others discover new ways of approaching life. It's a different perspective, a different lens, a different possibility. This conversation isn't really about disability, it's about choice. It's about deciding whether you follow your own internal compass or allow someone else to point it for you. Let's roll right in. All right. Welcome to the Work Sucks, But I Like It podcast. Today we have Kevin McShan. He's a graduate of St. Clair College's journalism, print, and new media program and has a decade plus of journalism experience. Kevin has an extensive history of promoting employment equality for individuals with disabilities. His own disability, he was born with spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy. He's also worked with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce on the Discovery Ability Network project and was part of the We Are Able, or Wearable, you have to correct me on that, Kevin, project, and has won numerous awards for his work in disability awareness. He's also the podcast host of Let's Have This Conversation. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Tony, it's great to be here, and thanks for the invite, my friend. I'm looking forward to having a conversation about work, inclusion, and what makes it all go around, my friend. Thanks so much for the invite, my friend.
Well, awesome. I was on your show, Kevin, the other day, and we had to have that conversation. Your podcast is Let's Have This Conversation. So I'm like, well, we have to have this conversation around work. So let's jump right in, Kevin. So, how do you define work today?
That's an interesting question. How I define work today is making sure that everyone has access to economic and societal prosperity. Now, it's different for all of us based on our areas of expertise and skill levels and interests, but making sure that everyone has an opportunity for economic impact, innovation, and access, my friend, is how I would define more today. Now, it's different for many people because our bridges towards work are different, but making sure that we have access to economic opportunity and societal advancement is how I would define work.
No, thank you, Kevin. So, when you graduated college, you'd indicated in an interview that I would kind of like, preparing here, listening to previous episodes of shows you've been on, and you had said that you had to volunteer for 4 years after you graduated from college, and it took you 6.5 years to find a company that would pay you. Walk us through that. You just talked about work as being, having access to economic, sort of these resources. What happened after college?
Yeah, so after college, I went on 10 consecutive job interviews. I graduated journalism school with a sports journalism background, and I wanted to be a sports reporter. But I went on 10 consecutive job interviews, and nobody would hire me. So I had to carve out a career as a professional speaker and sort of turn my story of rejection into a story of prosperity. And now I talk to organizations about the benefit and the need for to hire or amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities. Because if you look at the numbers, a quarter of people with disabilities are regularly employed compared to 68% of their non-disabled counterparts. So what I do now is I work with organizations to help amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities through speaking engagements and presentations. But going back to that time, yeah, I went on 10 consecutive job interviews, as I said, and I turned my rejection into my story of promise, as I like to call it now.
No, I love that. So, Kevin, what was the hardest part about going through those 10 interviews? I mean, outside from you getting rejected, right? I guess what was the thing that you had to really just sort of overcome, I guess?
Well, when you live with a disability. I think you know how to go back to the well of resilience more than once, and certainly anyone that's had a disability can understand that. You know, your employment journey is not always a straight line, and you know, I told someone the other day that when you have a disability, rejection in an employment isn't a maybe, it's a certainty, and certainly, when you look at that, you know, resilience, I always say, is the answer to the test once adversity strikes, and I think what I learned most through going through that process is that there are multiple different ways to define resilience, and I've come to learn the importance of internal motivation because it's my belief that if you don't set your own internal expectations for yourself, it's hard to raise to the level for anybody else. So the answer to the question in the short term is the learning about the importance of internal motivation and setting your own standards so that you can redefine your own version of prosperity, even if society tells you when you have a disability that you know, uh, you're set up not to be successful. So my job now is to paint my own portrait of success and making sure that we eliminate those societal barriers that are in the way of progress for people with disabilities.
And so one of the things we like to say in the show is that success is not a matter of good luck, it's good skills. And the skill that I'm hearing from you, and I want you to kind of build on this, of setting your own standards and having sort of this internal motivation. Walk us through how you've built these standards for yourself so you can live by and stay motivated by them.
You know, I think everyone's portrait of success is different, as I said before. And for me, I live my life through three non negotiables, that's energy, effort, and enthusiasm. If I don't have those in high supply, it's hard to live life from a social, economic, or societal standpoint. So the three non negotiables in life that I have are energy, effort, and enthusiasm, and it permeates through everything I do for sure.
Love that. So I want you to kind of build on each one here. So walk us through energy. What do you mean by energy? Like the internal energy, energy around you? What do you mean by energy? I love these three actually.
The energy, so the type of disability that I have, it affects my level of energy and my level of stamina and all of that stuff. So, in terms of energy, in terms of bring the necessary attitude and approach to solving problems, because I think people with disabilities are natural problem solvers. So the energy I speak of when I talk about career non-negotiables is having the amount of physical and mental energy to really know what your value proposition is as a professional, and going after it every day with the energy needed to be successful in terms of the amount of stamina and the amount of intellectual energy that you have to be successful.
No, that's awesome. So that must take a lot of effort, right? So that leads into your next E, if you will. So walk us through effort now.
The effort, I always say that you make time in life for the stuff that you prioritize. If you prioritize something, it'll show. And when you chat GPT your way through life and let other people decide the description that you're putting out into the world, then that's easily detectable in the age of AI. So the effort is the amount of, uh, you know, um, the amount of human and intellectual capital you put behind an effort. And anyone that's been a teacher or anyone that's had to grade papers before knows exactly what I'm talking about, because there are ways to artificially get your way through life and authentically get your way through life. So effort's all about the difference between authenticity and artificial sort of, acceptance. And I try to, there's a motto in my life that I live by, and that's that excuses are deterrents for, continual progress. If you constantly make excuses, then the roadmap to success is harder to achieve because you're building in sort of your artificial acceptance or answers to life that you're letting other people control the narrative. So.
I love how you threw in the narrative there with AI, right? Like creating your own authentic description of yourself. That's so critical today, right? We rely on, like you said jokingly, with AI to do that effort for us, and it really needs to come from us. So I love that. So how do you get this enthusiasm around all these things now?
Enthusiasm is just about giving a shit, to be perfectly honest, about uh giving uh giving yourself first of all, the authority to say that I care about this enough that I'm willing to show up with all of the energy and all of my maximum effort, and I'm gonna do it with a smile. It takes a lot more energy to be unhappy than it is to smile. So when we talk about enthusiasm, I have three ways at looking at enthusiasm. You've got to find something you enjoy, something that brings you intense passion, and something that if you died tomorrow, that you're willing to die on the vine to sort of accomplish. So enthusiasm also comes about when we talk about your personal motivations for life. What aligns your internal fire? And for all of us, it's different. So the question I ask myself is why am I lighting this internal fire? If I can't give myself a 30-second answer as to why I'm excited about doing something, I don't tend to do it because you've got to light your internal fire. So many people go through life and work saying, I have to go to work for 8 hours just to get a paycheck. But if you reframe it to say, I'm going to work for 8 hours to contribute, and these are my reasons for contributing, then your internal fire is lit, and then the enthusiasm takes care of itself because you have the internal fire to contribute your maximum effort, my friend.
No, and I love your specific use of words, Kevin. I'm a big fan of how I choose my words. Walk us through your thoughts on the word disability.
If you want the short answer, you might want to pop some popcorn and come back. But uh, you know, um, disability to me is a new way of framing, the ability to um, allow others to have a new way of thinking about approaching different things in life. Disability can be uh, 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 broad term when we talk about workforce innovation. A lot of, especially in the states now, depending on the states you live in, diversity, equity, and inclusion is going over what I call an extreme makeover. So the way I look at disability is how are you defining your effort to include yourself. So instead of looking at it from a negative limitation, it's how are you defining your effort or your equality effort to include yourself in a conversation. I talk a lot about finding internal motivation, as I said, And, when I graduated college, I was 19 years old, and I didn't get my first paying job until I was 25. And the reason was, at the time, people viewed my disability as a liability. So, as you mentioned, I uh, volunteered for 4 straight years at a local television station in my hometown, and I told them I didn't want any money. I just wanted to prove that I could be a reporter. So through that experience, I covered 50 stories, and then I found an avenue to my local provincial government here in Ontario. And they said, "Hey, you're really good at talking about workplace inclusion for people with disabilities." So they hired me to be a special master to advise the province on looking at how they hire folks with disabilities. And through there, I started my journey in employment. But it started because I had the internal motivation to give maximum effort to something that I um, care about deeply, and that's the inclusion of folks with disabilities. Because when you hire folks with disabilities, you do a couple of things. You reduce turnover, training costs, and the amount of time that you have to train someone. So it's all about finding, in my view, in life, we're all given, our own internal compass, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of point it in the direction that we want it to go. And the worst thing I think you can do is lead expect that others can lead you to your own definition of prosperity, because if you're not on the journey to find your own level of prosperity, then you're giving up the journey of how you want to show up in a life to someone else, and then you're giving away your autonomy of choice. So it's important to have autonomy of choice when you're in career development, and then once you're in your desired career, it's about finding ways to maximize your level of impact so you can leave a future for the next generation. So I hope that answers the question.
No, I love that, Kevin. I also love how you try to put a positive spin on it, right? I guess I agree with you. Disability makes it sound so negative and limiting. I guess, what do you recommend for people to ask then when we talk about disability instead of assume when people have, I don't even know what the right word is anymore. I like what you said, the effort to include yourself. um, what should people be asking and not assuming when we talk about disability?
When we talk about disability, uh, I spend a lot of time trying to get employers to understand it's not about focusing on the disability, it's about focusing on the person,
Ah,
and focusing on the abilities of the person and how they can help innovate the job to make the job description easier based on their own life experience. So if someone isn't great about, because this is my own experience. I'm not great at working in open air environments. I like to work in quiet spaces to collect thoughts and do communicating. So it's about innovating futures so that we make the world of work easier. Instead of looking at disability as a limitation, we should start to look at it as a way of innovation to make the world of work easier, more efficient, and hopefully, at the end of the day, more enjoyable as well.
I mean, I love how you said it right there, right? You look at they're focusing on the person, right? Not the disability. I mean, that in itself is, I love that. Just asking about the person and not the disability. So when we talk about workplace culture, you've kind of been, alluding to it, with your examples here. How do we start to really foster this culture of inclusion and diversity in the workplace?
Well, the first thing is we've got to put people in leadership positions that aren't typically there, because you accomplish two things when you do that. You have a new way of looking at how your organization runs, and then you uh, are are at the forefront of telling people that you're an inclusive organization. There are so many people that put on the bottom of a job description that we're an equal opportunity employer. But let's look at what that actually means. When you're an equal opportunity employer, what does that mean? Do you allow people with disabilities to interview for a job? And then expect them to fit their expertise into a job description that you've artificially created. But once that's why it's so important to leverage the relationships that you have with the companies or with the employees that work for your company, because I tell leaders all the time when I give speeches as a professional speaker, that the people in your organization that you are in charge of leading are your most important assets. So the way that you maximize productivity and results is you get to know them on a personal level. Instead of saying, "How was your weekend?" You can say, "Oh, well, what surprised you most about the weekend, and how are you going to use the rest or the experiences for the weekend to show up better?" As the best version of yourself for the week. And when we're talking about interviewing people with disabilities, you can say, instead of "Tell me about your experience," you can say, how, based on our job description, does this fit into your life experience? And what points of difference are you going to bring to an organization that sort of eliminate our barriers to expansion? Instead of looking at disability as a limitation, employers and organizational leaders should look at it as a chance to expand their horizon of understanding and allow them to gain a competitive edge over their competitors.
So I'm just thinking back, Kevin, you had those 10 companies that rejected you 10 times, and I can just hear them saying, well, we don't have a position for someone with a disability. You know, what you're saying is like, we got to focus on the job. So I guess, can you get a little a little technical here with how companies can integrate someone with a disability while focusing on their strengths?
Yeah, so instead of, um so I'll give you, an example of what I was told when I graduated and went on those job interviews. They said, "Kevin, you're highly qualified, we'd love to have you, but because of the way we operate in the newsroom, we don't think you're going we don't have the resources to support you. So we wish you well, you're qualified, but because of our limitations in terms of resources in a newsroom, we can't hire you." So now what we can do is allow people to work from home, or allow people to come into the office and set up an office that's on the first floor, or set up an office that allows them to communicate using technology instead of always having to come into the office, because a large barrier is often transportation for folks with disabilities. So how, using technology, can we think smarter? And if they have an opportunity to go into the office, there are statistics that show that if you hire folks with disabilities, that they increase the social morale of an organization. So when you hire folks with disabilities, there's a chance to partner with other organizations. What other community organizations can we partner with? You know, there are uh, organizations in every state that get hired by the government to employ folks with disabilities. And often those organizations come with job coaches that help the employer to better implement the onboarding and implementation of folks with disabilities. Or if you don't want to work with a specific organization, that's why it's so important to get to know people, to get to know what makes them tick. How can we, innovate our job expectations to meet the abilities of a person with a disability while also setting the expectations of what the job requires, but how do we provide them the personal autonomy for them to be successful? So that could be as simple as the raise side of a desk, the use of assisted software, or for me, when I go through emails, I uh, use a dictator to make sure that I can read them faster. Because if you put a whole bunch of words on a page, I struggle to read, but if I can read something through dictation, it goes a lot faster, and I absorb the information faster. So it's about listening to the person with a disability instead of always trying to pigeonhole the job description to fit that person. So it's about finding ways to innovate the job so that the person can thrive in the job.
I love that, Kevin. Like thinking outside the box. And all I can say is it sucks for those 10 companies not hiring you because here you are thinking outside the box with all these innovative ways. So, no, thank you. So, Kevin, this is the Work Sucks, but I Like It podcast. What sucks about your work and what are you doing to make it not suck today?
Well, what sucks is that only a quarter of people with disabilities across the country in both Canada and the United States are employed versus 65 to 68% of their non disabled counterparts. So, what I'm doing is I'm having conversations with organizations every day about the need to amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities and the competitive advantage that comes with hiring it and hiring people with disabilities and making organizations get out of their shell when it comes to their attitudinal barriers when hiring folks with disabilities and having them reimagine work for not a liability but an opportunity for growth and expansion, as I said before.
No, I love that, Kevin. If listeners of this show want to, learn more about your work, reach out to you for, your guidance, your wisdom here, where's a good place for them to land?
Yeah, so everything about me is on my website, kevinmcshanspeaks.com. I'm active on LinkedIn. I post every day, as you know. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and subscribe to my podcast. Let's have this conversation where I talk to business leaders and people like yourself about a variety of issues. But everything you need to know about me is on kevinmcshanspeaks.com.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Tony, it's great to see you, and thanks for the invitation to talk about inclusion, acceptance in the workplace, my friend. You're doing great work, and I'm honored to add my level of expertise to the show and to the mission, my friend. Thanks so much for having me, and have a great day.
What I took away from this conversation is that the story was never about disability. The story is always about the person. Too often we focus on labels, limitations, and assumptions. Kevin reminds us to focus on energy, effort, enthusiasm, and possibility. He chooses every day to create his life rather than waiting for someone else to give him permission. Success is not a matter of good luck, it's good skills. The skill to work on this week is developing your internal compass. Write out what Kevin lives by for you. What gives you energy? What does effort really look like for you? How do you create enthusiasm in your life? For me, I derive energy from challenging cliche self help themes with how we show up to work. Work sucks at times, but we can learn to love the process. Effort is all about doing the things that need to get done, even though we don't want to. It reminds us of those times of signing up for a marathon and needing to put the effort months before to train for it. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. on Saturdays to run 20 miles. Enthusiasm comes about for me when I resonate with people like Kevin that are energetic towards what they do. I get excited for them and also myself. So, again, work sucks, but we can learn to like the entire process.